This is your instructional DVD on tattoo line work with Richard Sanchez, owner of Freak Show Tattoo in Glendale, Arizona. Now before you jump into tattooing, you have to lay that stencil. So make sure that the skin is nice and clean. If there's hair, shave it. Use isopropyl alcohol to lift natural oils from the skin surface, which makes for a cleaner stencil application. Make sure that the client's body is in their natural standing position. For instance, if you apply a stencil to the leg while they're sitting down, when they stand up, that image will be distorted. Peel back the stencil paper slowly, making sure that the stencil bonded to the skin correctly. If it did not bond correctly, simply reapply your stencil application product in the desired area to ensure a clean stencil pattern. Make sure you take a lot of time when applying your stencil, because it is the roadmap to a successful tattoo. Now that your stencil is applied, it is extremely important to make sure that your client likes the positioning, flow, and style of the tattoo. Making sure they have a good look and letting them confirm that it's the right placement before you start tattooing. Now that the stencil is drying, this is a great time to familiarize yourself with the design, studying each line and making sure that everything makes sense to you. Notice that the stencil is a little blurry. If you're worried about that, don't stress yourself out. Don't start tattooing and redraw it. Fortunately for Richard, this is his own design, so he's very familiar with it. Now there is a reason Richard started at the bottom of the tattoo, and that is so he can wipe his excess ink away from the stencil. That way he doesn't make his stencil disappear while he's doing the tattoo. So keep in mind to start at the bottom of your stencil and wipe the excess ink in the downwards position away from your stencil, like you see him doing there. You'll also notice Richard is applying A&D ointment to the skin surface. A&D ointment is very important in the tattoo process. It lubricates the needles so they're less traumatic in the skin surface. It lubricates Richard's hands so it doesn't get caught up or snagged on the skin. It just glides smoothly, creating smooth line work. And the vitamins A and D help aid in the healing process of the tattoo. Stretching the tattoo is everything in getting a smooth line. If you notice, when Richard stretches, he's using 3 points to stretch. He's using his top finger, his bottom finger, and his opposing hand. It's hard to see because he does it fast, but if you pay attention, he's pulling the skin in 3 different directions, making it as taut as possible for that smooth line. So you see there his top finger, his bottom finger, and his opposing hand, they all pull that skin in different directions. I know it's hard when you're getting into your artwork, but try and remember to socialize with your client, making sure they're as comfortable as possible. The more relaxed and less tense your client is, the more relaxed you're going to be, creating a better tattoo. So make sure everyone's nice and comfortable. Comfort also brings me to my next subject of station setup. If an artist doesn't have everything in arm's reach, he's going to have to break concentration in order to find what he's looking for. You need everything right in arm's reach. Everything needs to be nice and organized. You should have proper lighting, proper seating for both you and the client. You can see an armrest underneath their arm. You can't be bending over or in a funky position trying to tattoo. You have to be as comfortable and natural as possible. So if you keep having to break concentration, say you ran out of paper towels, or it's too hot, you need to turn up the air conditioning. There's so many factors. You need to be completely focused. So take the time to make sure everything's just the way you want it before you start tattooing. Even set some music. You just need to get yourself in the groove of creativity and just let the artwork flow. He's not pulling his lines too fast, it's just nice and smooth. All of his lines are the same speed, making sure that he does it on the first pass so he doesn't have to go back over it. You want to make tattooing easy for you, so rather than trying to rush through your line work, tattoo one line at a time, making sure that it's perfect the first time. So you don't even have to go back, you don't have to worry about it, it's out of your mind. Some artists believe that you need a super fast liner that's really punchy to just drill in that line, but Richard's tattoo machines are running very smooth, and he's just keeping his hand speed very controlled. So just a little recap on the topics I was talking about, such as studying the stencil and familiarizing yourself with the tattoo design, wiping away the excess ink from the tattoo stencil so it doesn't disappear on you, aid ointment and stretching the skin properly, client comfort and station setup so you're not breaking concentration. And I can't stress enough one line at a time. You just have to have 100% concentration on what you're doing and ensure that it's done so you can move on to the next line. Now, I know I probably sound a little repetitious at this point, but unfortunately line work is the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to sit back and watch with you guys and just jump in when I see something more important to explain. Now the neat thing about Richard's work is the fact that he's adding Newschool and Oldschool together, kind of a Neotraditional form of design. And what I mean by that is he's got his traditional hard lines, like you see there, and he also has gray wash lines. And the gray wash lines is kind of the more Newschool, more realistic form of tattooing. He's got his tattoo machine running the same speed, but he's not setting the needle so much, and he's using gray wash rather than solid black. And you can see him, he's moving his tattoo machine at a little bit faster rate across the skin. And that's what's giving you that realistic look. It's not a hard black line representing the blood right there. It's really soft, and he's going to shade off of that, so you won't even see any sort of line. It'll just be blood right there. And that's what I mean by Newschool. It's just not traditional with the black hard lines. So you see these soft gray lines that he's putting in for the blood right here. He's going to come back with his shader and just whip shade right off of those gray lines, so you won't even see a line at all. It'll just be really realistic, like there's blood sitting on the skull. So if you're going to attempt to try some gray wash lines, really pay attention right here on how far the needles are out and how far they're going in the skin. As you can see, they're barely going in the skin surface. Just almost scratching the skin surface. He's not setting the needle at all like he would with a traditional tattoo or like he did the rose. It's very soft, very light, and also he's moving his machine faster than normal. So he's taking a look, and it looks like the skull is pretty much complete. A lot of the magic of the skull is done with his mags. So he's switching back to solid black and going to continue with the traditional form of tattooing. And he's still being very conscious of wiping away from his stencil. You can't ever forget about that. Again, you want to take note on how smooth Richard's hand is when he's pulling the line. He's not cranking the tattoo machine up in voltage so he can pull that line faster. He's running the tattoo machine at the speed that sounds correct to him and tattooing with the machine. He's letting the machine do the work and just gliding with it. A lot of beginners ask what voltage their machine should be set at, and how can you answer that? You know, every machine's a little bit different. There's different coils, there's different spring setups, there's different size groupings that you could be tattooing with, and you know, a 7 tight's going to go in a lot slower than a single needle, so you have to adjust your speed accordingly. There's a lot of variables, so my advice on finding the right voltage is to just run the machine by itself. When it sounds smooth and consistent, that's where you should tattoo at. I mean, every machine's going to be different from one to the other, so it's very important. There's no set speed. It's what is consistent with your tattoo machine, and that's how Richard tattoos. A lot of beginners have questions about needle depths and contact screw and spring gaps and how far they should have their needles out of the tube. You have to find that out on your own. There's no set way. I've seen so many artists use so many different ways, so it's really what feels comfortable for you. Now, as far as Richard's setup, he has a slightly larger gap in between the contact screw and the front spring than your traditional dime setup. Now, the diamond nickel theory for your contact gaps, I believe that's a safety precaution for beginners so they're not hurting people. Definitely start off with the diamond nickel theory and branch off on your own from there. You can definitely tattoo with it. It's the traditional way of tattooing, and it's also a lot safer than trying to jump in and tattoo like Richard right off the bat. Also, you probably noticed from the video that he has his needles sticking pretty far out of the tube. That's so you can visually see exactly where that needle tip is pointing and where it's going to be entering the skin. And that's just his comfort zone. Because I've seen other artists, tattoo with the needle inside the tube and they're dragging the tube along the skin surface. So you really have to play around with it and find what works best for you. Well, I hope everyone watching got some useful information out of this film and you can apply it to your tattooing techniques. So there's your tattoo line work by Richard Sanchez. And here's a sneak peek at the color version, which was done in the same sitting. I want to give a special thanks to Rosanna for coming down on short notice and getting the tattoo. So thank you, Rosanna.